Hi, I'm Tom Gould from the UK, but currently in Freetown, Sierra Leone, as my girlfriend Lauren and I are currently heading to South Africa on a couple of Honda CG 125cc bikes. I'm passionate about riding, talking, and thinking about motorcycles. You can find more than 50 videos that I produced on my YouTube channel, I Like Motorbikes.
Welcome to the Real Riders Podcast. My name's Simon Josie, and if this is your first time here, welcome and thanks for listening. Tom Gould reached out to me in late February, expressing an interest in being a guest on the podcast. At that time, he and girlfriend Lauren were in Guinea on the west coast of Africa, heading south. When Tom contacted me, I wasn't familiar with him and his YouTube channel, I Like Motorbikes, but I thought it might be interesting to talk with someone who is publishing to YouTube while undertaking an epic journey. As you'll hear, it isn't Tom's first adventure, but nothing he's done before matches the scale of this undertaking. If you're interested to hear Tom speak prior to departure, have a listen to Season 5, Episode 7 of the Trail and Adventure Motorbike podcast, released on the 2nd of October last year. And for a conversation with both Tom and Lauren, have a listen to the UK to Africa on a CG125 episode of the Lightweight Adventurers podcast, released on the 9th of December last year, at about the time Tom and Lauren departed the UK. As I was completing the post-production on this episode, Tom and Lauren were in the Ivory Coast, or Côte d'Ivoire, and just about to head towards Ghana. In other news, I've been asked to appear at this year's Lightweight Adventure Festival as a guest of the Trail and Adventure Motorbike podcast, who are going to be running one of the festival stages. The festival will be held from the 12th to the 14th of July in the Peak District of the UK. I bought my air tickets and pulled my Zoom recorder out of storage. Very exciting. If you're interested in attending the festival, get yourself along to www.lightweightadventurers.co.uk for details. You can find the link in the episode notes. As always, if you have the time and inclination, please consider rating or liking the Real Riders podcast in your favourite podcast app or on YouTube. This will help other listeners find the podcast. The podcast has accounts on multiple social media channels, but I generally only post to them whenever new episodes of the podcast drop. Please feel free to repost, reskeet, and retweet to help get the word out there about the podcast. A list of the Real Riders socials can also be found in the episode notes. Righto, let's get to my talk with Tom. Hey Tom, welcome to the podcast and thanks for being part of today's episode. How's it going?
Yeah, very good. I'm for once in a hotel and very comfortable for a change, which is quite nice, quite pleasant.
Obviously, you're in the middle of this massive big adventure, which no doubt we're going to hear a lot about as we go through this conversation today. But I think maybe to start with, I'd like to ask how you got first started with motorcycling. When did you first start to ride?
Yeah, so a little bit different to a lot of people. So people get into motorcycles quite early on. You know, their family members rode. You know, their dads quite often, or older brothers maybe, or they got a bike when they were 3, 4, 5 years old or whatever. But that wasn't me. Always interested in motorcycles and cars from an early age, but never really had the opportunity. Didn't come from a well-off background, so yeah, the idea of having a toy like that was just never would have happened. So it wasn't until I went to college and was getting into motorsport engineering. Wanted that as a career, not just a mechanic in a basic garage, but motorsport engineering was really exciting to me. So pursued that, and it was while on that course that there were, I think, for the 30 or so people there, we had a real high proportion of bikers, and a couple of those are long-standing friends now, still friends with them 15, 16 years later, and they really kind of gave me the bug for motorcycling and fueled the fire, so to speak. And so after that, it was just a matter of time, and it took me until I was, I think, 21, and I finally managed to get my own motorcycle, and basically didn't have a very good job. Spent the 500 quid that I had getting a motorbike bought from eBay, unseen, £450 and spent the rest of the money getting a bus and coach and lifts and so on from where I lived in Somerset up to Liverpool, which, if any of your listeners are not from the UK, it's a few hundred miles to go and get this elusive first motorcycle and ride it home. And it was terrible. It's a terrible, terrible bike. But yeah, ignited the passion. It's been with me ever since.
And what kind of bike was it, that first bike?
A 1988 Suzuki GSX 600F. So people don't know that. It's a Suzuki Bandit with a frock, basically a fully fared bike. And they were renowned for being terrible in their day, and it wasn't much better in 2013 when I got mine.
Sounds a little bit like my second bike, which was a Suzuki GSX 550 EF, and it was just I think it was about 570 cc. So it's almost like they made it a little bit bigger to be the 600 or something in later years. Was that 4-cylinder? I'm just a little bit curious because of my past history.
Yeah, so 4-cylinder, an air oil cooled motor, so not water cooled. I think they're about 80 horsepower, and the bike weighed like 230 kilos or something. So a big, heavy old bus, really, for not a lot of horsepower. But yeah, to me, it was brilliant. It was excitement. I didn't have a car license before that. I didn't have a car. It was my only means of transport, and couldn't have been happier on the day of picking that up and starting the ride home. Even though it broke down multiple times between Liverpool and Derby, where I was going to visit my friends. So not the best first day of ownership.
And like, I don't want you to incriminate yourself, but did you have a license before you got the bike?
Yeah, I did actually. Did it all legally. Yeah, I got my license in the January of 2013. I think the 26th of January. And then I think it was February the 2nd that I was buying the bike, because it was the earliest I could buy one. I couldn't buy one in my budget any sooner.
And that's quite, I mean, that sounds like quite a large, okay, maybe not so powerful, but still quite a large bike for a first bike. Because when I got my first bike, I was only able to get a 250, and this was in New Zealand, right? So were there any restrictions on engine capacity or on power at the time that you bought this bike and got your license?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was under the sort of, quote unquote, learner license, in the sense that I had to have a bike restricted to 33 horsepower. It's the old license rules. It changed. In fact, if I'd have failed my Mod 2 test, the second part of the motorcycle test in the UK, I would have then had to retake both sections under the new law. It was literally, in February 2013, I think it changed. So I was limited to 33 horsepower, and that was for 2 years. At the end of those 2 years, you had a full unrestricted license, and you could go and get whatever you wanted. But there was nothing stopping you getting a 200 horsepower motorcycle and restricting it to 33 horsepower under those rules. So that was the case for the first couple of years of bike riding, which flew by, and then I was allowed proper power.
I think in New Zealand, if we did a defensive driving course specifically for motorcyclists, we could reduce the time that we were on a restricted license, which I did take advantage of. And I think I learned the one thing that has prevented me from killing myself, which was look where you want to go. And it's something that I've always remembered. If you want to look in the ditch, that's where you're going to end up, in the ditch. And I've got myself out of a few hairy scrapes a couple of times by looking around the corner when I've been going a little too quick, shall we say.
So valuable. I remember learning that lesson for myself on that first bike, actually.
It really works. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it?
Worth reiterating at every opportunity, because even, some of us have heard it time and time again. I still have to remind myself today, 11 years later. Sometimes it's just, very easily overlooked.
Now, look, according to your YouTube bio, you've owned more than 30 bikes, and this prompts a question in my head. It's like, have you got a problem with commitment?
Probably. I've also got a problem with I'm never satisfied, in the sense that I think the idea of the bike is always greater than the reality. I set my sights on something, I think that's amazing, that's going to tick all of the boxes, I'm never going to want another motorbike again. And then I get it, and actually, I find some niggles or some things that aren't quite right. And, I'd say quite often now, rather than have a £20,000 bike, I would rather have 5 £4,000 bikes, or 10 £2,000 bikes, because it's better to have sort of more things that do more specific tasks than having one that tries to tick all of the boxes. And I just think motorcycles are excellent. So having more is always better.
Yeah, well, so I was going to ask you actually, what kind of riding do you do? Because your YouTube suggests that you ride everything, you do all sorts of kind of riding, and maybe that's sort of linked to this need of yours to have so many different types of bikes. But if I was to ask you in one sentence, you're allowed to answer longer, of course, in one sentence. But what kind of rider do you describe yourself as?
A motorcycle rider, everything. There's nothing that I don't want to do on bikes. I like enduro. I'm not very good at motocross because I'm too scared to do big jumps, but I still like playing in the dirt. Adventure riding, going off the beaten track, camping, riding on track days, racing around tracks has been something that just scratched an itch like nothing else has ever before. Yeah, playing around with my mates, going to a cafe or whatever on a weekend. Every type of motorcycle riding excites me. And one thing I'd love to do more of is trials riding. So I think it's one of those really kind of easy to do in the sense that it's not hard to ride a trials bike, but to ride it well is really hard to do. And that kind of progression and trying to figure things out like that is something I enjoy. So there's no, you name it, I want to have a go at it.
And as we talk today, what bikes do you currently own, or bikes do you currently own?
Actually, I had to go on the trip that I'm currently on, had to sell everything. So the only one I've got is the one with me, a little 125cc, 10 horsepower, single cylinder, Honda CG 125.
Yeah, now, so, I mean, that begs all sorts of questions. Like, what's your obsession with this small capacity bike? Because it doesn't sound like an easy option to ride to South Africa on a 125cc bike. But correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you're incorrect in that assessment at all. And I guess the obsession about it is it started probably 7 or 8 years ago. Me and two of my riding buddies, the ones that I mentioned before that I met at college and kind of really motivated me to get into motorcycles, we were having a conversation about what's the most fun we've ever had on motorbikes. And it kind of came down, in the end of this, hours long conversation, that it was when we were with friends, and the closer you can get to the limit of a given motorcycle, the more fun it becomes. And actually, the ones that are easier to get to the limit are those with a lower CC. Maybe they're mini motos, they're 70cc pit bikes or off road things. Ones that aren't particularly hard to ride fast. They can be the most fun when you're doing it with friends. So we agreed that we would all buy small capacity bikes and then do some adventures on it. And that's when I bought this bike. I bought it in 2017. In preparation to go and do these kind of trips. And it took, I think, 3 or 4 years before we actually got our first one under our belts doing that. But it was doing that and starting that. And then I went away on a European trip, my first visit into sort of mainland Europe, on that bike, solo, and did 2,100 miles, I think, in 10 days. And I just fell in love with it. I thought it was fantastic, a brilliant way to travel. And I really liked the sort of kudos that came with riding a small bike over larger distances. It's seen as an underdog, and I always like backing an underdog rather than something that seems like it should be doing, an Africa Twin or Tenere or whatever it may be.
I've got this idea in my head I want to ask you, because are you able sort of to disassociate yourself from the bike when you're riding and just enjoy the ride for the sake of the ride, the pleasure of the ride? Or are you constantly thinking, oh, the bike doesn't quite feel right, or I wish there was a little bit more air in the tire, or I should have oiled the chain a bit, or, are you, just based on what you were saying earlier about you've never quite satisfied, but can you actually enjoy a ride for the sake of a ride and sort of disconnect from the machine that you're riding on and just enjoy the physical sensation of riding?
That is a great question. I've never been asked anything like that before. I'm trying to picture myself now back, when I'm actually on the bike holding the bars. And I think, yes, definitely I can. It's not always easy to do, particularly I've ridden some bikes to review them. And in those moments, you're constantly thinking about, right, how do the brakes feel, or what do the shock and the suspension feel like? And, thinking about the tires and so on. So in those moments, no, definitely not, because the focus is how does the bike feel? But one of the moments that I've definitely had, I think they call it the flow state, when time can pass by sort of really quickly. I've definitely had those moments, both on the road, but certainly racing on the track. I raced a Honda CB500 for a few rounds of racing a couple of years ago. And that, like nothing other, gives you an incredible focus. And there's no room for how does the bike feel? What does did I do the chain with it? It's only the next corner, the next corner. It's just such a all-encompassing focus. And yes, it's just completely in the moment, you and the bike. And it's wonderful. Wonderful. I don't know. I've never come across anything that gives that feeling in any other motorcycle experience I've had.
So now I'm wondering, when you're doing this tour, this adventure ride at the moment, are you listening to music? Are you talking with Lauren? Do you have comms, or are you just in your own world?
No, so Lauren and I have comms, so we're chatting along quite often, and it helps massively because some of the stretches are quite long and boring, or have been, and being able to chat and while away the time is really useful. When we haven't had comms, we really notice how it feels like the riding is harder because you're more focused on potentially the bad bits, maybe the sights, the smells, things that aren't pleasant, the road conditions, and so on, and not being able to communicate about those things makes it feel harder than it is. It feels so much more isolating than perhaps it did before, because I've not ridden with intercoms before this, and kind of feel like I've missed out on all those times before when I haven't had it, and realizing how much better it makes things.
Yeah, it's an interesting question in my mind. I think many years ago I tried listening to music a little bit, but more recently I sort of come back to motorcycling in my later life, and I don't want the distraction. I don't want the distraction of comms. I don't want the distraction of music. I just want to be completely focused. But that may say something more about my age, my mental capabilities than anything else. Okay, so we've talked about the bikes. What about the video making, the film making? When did all that start? Had you done anything with video cameras before you created the YouTube channel?
No, creating content and videos is something that I never considered myself doing. It wasn't a real conscious effort, when I was younger, like it may have been for some other people. I kind of fell into it in a sense. I love motorbikes so much that I originally created a website to blog and talk to people about what I'm doing, because I find all manners of motorcycles interesting, and other people might find it interesting what I'm doing too. Kind of egotistical in that sense, perhaps, but yeah, I thought I'd like to share the adventure at the very least. And the video side of things was kind of by proxy because of that. I happened to be on LinkedIn one day, and I saw a motorcycle company say, we want people to review our new motorbike. Get in touch if that sounds like something you want to do. I thought, well, I could give that a go. Sure, I'm sure I could review a bike. And initially, it was only thinking I could review it and post something up on my website. So I got in touch with them, and they said, yeah, sure, come along. And my best friend's partner, she was at university at the time, studying film studies. And I actually sent her a message and thought, do you know what? It might be cool if we make a video about this. How does that sound? And so we worked together to produce this first video. And that's where this idea of creating content came from. And it's just off the back of that, really. And I didn't realize I was a particularly creative person. For me, being a creative person was being good at art, drawing something fantastic, or being a good painter, or sculpting a model. That's what a creative person was in my mind. And actually going on this journey of creating content and making videos has made me realize that actually I'm much more creative than I gave myself credit for. And I've really enjoyed learning more about things. I'm very much, if I'm doing something, I want to learn the most I can about it. I'm always on Wikipedia, kind of learning. If I hear about a particular thing, it could be something based in history or whatever, but I want to go and learn as much as I can about it, even if I don't necessarily remember it and can repeat it. I just want to absorb all that information, and that's kind of where I've ended up on this journey of video production.
So have you had any formal training in film video, or is it all self-taught?
Zero. It's a combination of watching things on YouTube, trying to emulate it in one way or another, and yeah, working with a couple of friends that I've got. Another friend of mine was into video creating, and yeah, had a YouTube channel and had done some work for other clients and so on. And it was a combination of those two people being very close to them, and bouncing things off those two. Really fortunate to kind of learn some bits here and there between those people. And like I say, with YouTube or the internet, that's the only way I've learned anything.
Right. And what have you found to be the most challenging aspect of learning to create video?
All of it has been super difficult. Before I started creating, I didn't realize there was such a thing as A roll and B roll. Like, I had no idea. That was not something I was aware of. Audio is a huge thing that I'm still not even scratching the surface of. And learning all these things combined, what makes a good idea, what's bad, having a scene that goes on for too long, how to invoke emotion into something, all of these things that I'm so, I might have created 50 odd videos or whatever it may be, but I'm still not even remotely near understanding all of the aspects that goes into video production and how to make a good production. Because, like a lot of people, I'm sure that get into this kind of creative area, the idea that you have and the capability of your skill set, they end up being having such a huge gap between them, and you have to really create 1,000 videos or whatever it might be, or write 1,000 songs before you can bridge that gap, and the idea can become the reality. And yeah, I'm still working towards that.
Mm. I want to come back and talk about the YouTube channel and running a YouTube channel, but I think it's so interesting to talk to you at the moment because you are in Sierra Leone. I'm not sure, is it halfway to South Africa yet? I'm not sure.
So the original route we planned was somewhere around 15,000 miles, 24,000 kilometers, and now we've detoured a lot. So we're at about 7,000 miles, 11,000 kilometers in. So not quite halfway, I don't think. We'll see. Once we get to the end, I can tell you whether this is the halfway point or not.
Fair enough. And I realise also that you've dropped the first episode on the 27th of February, and I won't ask you to let any spoilers go because there was quite a cliffhanger at the end of that first episode, which was quite interesting. But just if I go back, so you're riding from the UK to South Africa. You left home on the 7th of December last year, and you currently find yourselves in Freetown, which, if anyone who's seen the first episode on YouTube would say, oh, okay, well, things obviously turned out pretty well after the first episode. You've obviously made the decision to produce the episodes on the road rather than do all the post-production at the end of the trip. So just tell me about that decision, because that's a big decision. Are you happy with that decision? Do you feel you had to do that decision? Just tell me a little about that.
The only time I've done it differently is the Euro tour that I mentioned earlier. And I kind of recorded that way before YouTube was even thought about. Just had a GoPro, decided to take it and record some stuff, and then made a video, a few years later. And I think that way of doing things, it was certainly possible to do it, but for me, it didn't feel like the right decision because a lot of the thoughts and feelings and experiences weren't so fresh. So it was you're kind of drawing on them from quite a time back. And so, yeah, I think I'm happy with the decision so far. It's definitely not the easiest thing to do because if anyone's traveled Africa, the Wi-Fi is generally terrible in lots of places. The electricity can go off between certain hours of the day. While camping by the side of the road isn't always the most comfortable place to edit. I find that I have to be relatively comfortable to maintain the focus to edit things. But yeah, the decision was largely led because the feelings and experience and emotions that I feel, I want to be able to draw upon them more easily and include those in the videos. I think that's important for me.
And have you put yourself under pressure in terms of a release schedule? So, like I said, the first episode came out on the 27th of February. Have you got a fixed schedule that you're working to, or are you just releasing when you're able to?
Much more the latter. Yeah, releasing when we're able to, because we've learnt so far that things don't go to plan when traveling. I broke the laptop, the hard drive decided to quit on me midway through Morocco. So I was partway through editing, and then the hard drive died, and then coming across a reliable place when we're in an area for more than a day or a bunch of hours, and being able to find somewhere that would both stock the parts and be able to repair the laptop was sort of relatively difficult. So we didn't manage that until Dakar in Senegal. So I would love to commit to a schedule, but it's just not feasible for us. We're so fluid and flexible with what's happening day to day that committing a bunch of hours a week to stop in a particular place just doesn't feel right, because we're now also battling time in the sense that we've got visas that are expiring. So we've got time to, we have to put miles in to get to certain places. Also, rainy season is coming relatively soon, so kind of making sure we're away from that as much as possible, because otherwise the riding's going to become a lot more challenging. So yeah, with these things in the back of our mind, like first and foremost, it's the adventure for adventure's sake. Enjoy what we're doing and kind of be relatively present and enjoy that. And YouTube is definitely and yeah, video creating is definitely a secondary to that, but without being kind of left by the wayside. So we're trying to find the balance between all of that.
Mm. And as time has gone on since you left the UK in early December, are you filming at the same rate? So are you shooting the same amount of footage every day, or is it sort of really up and down depending on where you are, how you're feeling, etc.?
Yeah, super variable, because there's definitely days that I have more ideas or more thoughts about the kind of videos that I want to create and what scenes that I might want to involve. And then there's other days, like the last 2 days, for example, I've been really unmotivated to film. And those because, really bad things happen, and then you're focused on those things and not thinking about the video creating. And then over time, kind of a little bit of guilt creeps in, and the little voice in the back of your head says, by the way, you're supposed to be creating videos, you better get the camera out. So it's a bit of a battle within myself. So there's certainly no kind of, oh, I must shoot 2 hours of footage today and it must be of these things. It's whatever feels right, and trying to be conscious of, people don't want to see, or I don't think they want to see, and I certainly don't want to create videos where it's a single fixed camera angle and I wake up and it's good morning every morning. Here's my breakfast. I'm putting down the tent. Now I'm riding here. And then I don't want it to be so regimented in, oh, you can tell this is an I Like Motorbikes video because they're all the same. He always says hello, he always does this, and then it's always this sequence, and then it's the end. I don't want that to happen, because that's not representative and truthful of the experience. Every day is different. It's variable, and so I want that to be, I want that to be part of the films that I make.
And how much of that did you think about before you left, or is that really something that's developed on the road?
It's much more developed on the road, but I did think about it beforehand. But in truth, I've never done a long distance motorbike trip like this. Every other trip that I've done has been, a week or 2 weeks. It's been a holiday. It's not been a real, long distance overland trip. So I had no way of knowing. I realized that I could think about it for 100 years and still never know the answer. The only way to know is to go and do the thing. And that's what we're slowly figuring out along the way.
One of the things that I'm most interested in when I talk to people is the concept, or their concept, of story. And story is not necessarily what you might speak to the camera. It's not necessarily something that's written down. But for me personally, I need some story to engage me, whether it's conveyed visually or spoken word or written word. I need that. To what extent does storytelling, story making, and narrative structure play in your thinking when you approach the video making?
That's a great question. I think in the early videos that I created, it was not a conscious effort at all. It was just a byproduct, and it was either good or it was bad. It was because it wasn't, it wasn't a thought about thing prior to going and shooting the video. But over time, I've definitely, I'll sit and make a plan for certain videos if I know what I'm doing. Sometimes I've shot videos and it's not necessarily been thought about before shooting it, but then when I come to putting the story together or putting the video together, I'm thinking, right, well, no, I don't want to have that scene in because it doesn't fit what I'm trying to say, or it's too much of one thing and not enough of another. Whether it's talking to camera directly in a headshot or whether it's in voiceover. So it's definitely something that try and incorporate, but I'm, like I say, I don't really know what I'm doing, truth be told. So it's every time I create a video, I'm just trying to learn from the things that I feel like I didn't do very well in the previous video, and try and improve for the next one. So yeah, it's thought about. I don't think I'm very good at it yet. Still need to make another 950 videos maybe till I get there.
And what camera gear are you traveling with? You referred to a GoPro, but in total, what you got multiple cameras or just what's your setup for capturing the footage?
Yeah, so I have two GoPros, an Insta360, and then I do have a drone, but it's really frustrating because it got left behind in Spain because traveling through Morocco with it is a little bit of a, I say, grey area. It's illegal, but not legal. Yeah,
Oh,
very conflicting whether you can get through Morocco with one, but I now know quite a few people that have done successfully. So I kind of wish I'd smuggled mine through. But yeah, now we're having battles trying to ship out the drone and batteries and so on, so we can have it back in my arsenal.
right, right. Yeah, I can imagine there are things that you're seeing and you're probably frustrated going, I wish I had the drone right now. Yeah.
So many times, some of the scenes we're seeing, because there's certainly in the area we are right now in Sierra Leone, some of the landscapes are so deep, dense kind of jungle and bushland. And I just think, God, if I could just get, you know, 10, 12 feet even, it would look incredible, let alone if you send a drone up 100 feet or more. So yeah, really, really kind of devastated about that in some senses, but also I don't want to have a drone and only shoot with a drone.
Sure, sure. Just in terms of the trip rather than the filming, is it living up to expectations? Like, is it so far? I mean, obviously you've had some challenges. We've all been introduced to those challenges in the first episode of your series, but is it living up to expectations and hopes?
More than, more than. I kind of I feel like I've been a bit of an adventurer, but without having the ability to go on a real adventure like this. Every time, even buying my first bike, most people just go along to their local motorcycle dealer that's a few miles away and buy a bike and ride it home. No, I went a few hundred miles to buy a bike that I hadn't seen to ride it home from Liverpool. And, I kind of guess searching for that adventure in various ways. So now that I've got the ability to do this, it's incredible. I didn't expect I would enjoy it this much. Of course, like not every day is great. I've had things stolen, money taken from me. I've had bad days. I've been too hot, hungry, grumpy, dehydrated, whatever it may be. But I always hoped that the good days would outweigh the bad, and by far they do. We've met some incredible people, ridden some fantastic roads, ridden some terrible roads, but it's kind of funny within that. Even border crossings, having officers shouting at you and getting grumpy, and all these weird and wonderful things that happen, and things that you just wouldn't see at home. And it's one thing to see it on YouTube, for example, and I appreciate that some of the viewers will feel the same in that you're seeing it, and it's kind of interesting and cool, and you think, that looks brilliant, or it looks terrible, and I can assimilate with that slightly, and put myself in that person's shoes, but it's not the same as being able to see it, hear it, smell it, touch it for yourself, and it's that thing that's exciting me. I've always felt like doing the same thing day in day out. You walk, you drive, or you get a train or whatever to the same place of work at the same time, seeing the same people every day, and that kind of monotony for me was really grinding on me. So having this opportunity to go and see new things almost every day, things that I've never even imagined, seeing animals that were you only see on David Attenborough's shows or in books, and seeing them for myself is just it lights me up.
I mean, do you feel you've changed? Like when you go home, eventually, are your friends, your family going to say, "Oh, Tom, you've changed"? Do you think you've changed?
My beard's longer. Uh, beard's longer than I ever usually have it, but generally, I've been pondering this myself. We don't have cups, so we often drink out of saucepans when we're at camp. So when I've been drinking out the saucepan and I can kind of see myself in the reflection of the saucepan, and I look at myself and think, is it today? Is it today I've changed? No, I don't feel like I've changed. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. And I don't feel like I have. I think I've become more patient because you have to be. I was regularly a very impatient person. So I think that's the only real change. I've kind of relaxed because I don't have a fixed timeline or agenda. I think that helps. I don't have to be at the office by 8 o'clock in the morning, so there's no stress or pressure because of that. So I think that's the only real change within me. But then that's perhaps a product of the circumstances in that I'm allowed to be more patient. But I don't feel like I've changed. I think that's kind of one for maybe family and friends when I see them again, and see whether they think I have.
Yeah, of course. It's funny you say that because actually, I mean, I've sort of tasted a sample of your videos on YouTube, and you present actually as someone who's pretty patient. I think I watched all the video of you preparing the bikes for the trip, and you just sort of seemed good-natured and patient. So it's interesting that you say that you feel that maybe that's something that's grown since you've come on the trip, and it's the circumstances which have enabled that or fostered that patience. So yeah, that's interesting.
Well, of course, with those videos, I'm the one editing them, so I get to pick and choose what people see. You don't see me swearing and shouting after I've dropped the hammer for the 15th time, or I can't find the elusive 10 millimeter socket or something like that, and I'm shouting and swearing, or it's easy to hide the stress when you don't record it or don't show it at least. So yeah, it's funny that you say that.
Now, okay, we talked about how far you are, and it's not really possible to say whether you're halfway. Are you getting close enough to the end of the planned trip to start worry about what's next?
Not at all. I don't know what's tomorrow, let alone in 3 months' time. So no, it doesn't feel like that yet. And at the moment, we're only getting further away from home, and I have no real strong desire or connection to go home right now. So the ideal situation is that continue to grow YouTube and earn some side income from that helps fund the adventures to continue, because this trip has opened my eyes that there's so many more places that I want to explore and see and experience for myself. The world's a massive place, and I've not been to 10% of the countries that I'd like to go to. So I just hope I can find some way to make it continue for a long while yet.
Okay, so you've been running the YouTube channel since, what did we say? Through about 3 years, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, just over 3 years, I think it is.
Yeah, that was when the first video was posted. So how's it been?
How has it been? That's a very open question.
Yeah,
I
open questions are
think
good for podcasts.
for sure. Has it been? It's been a big learning experience. Like I said, I don't come from a background or experience and knowledge of creating videos. So if you've never created a YouTube video, you might be baffled by the amount of things that go into it, or creating a successful YouTube video anyway, at least, from the, you might be able to go, right, well, I've created an absolutely incredible video. The storytelling is amazing. The audio is fantastic. The narrative that I've got, I've got everything that I wanted in this video, but you could upload it and you could get 10 views. You might get no views, and you'll forever be left wondering why. Maybe it's because the title isn't very good, or the thumbnail makes nobody want to click it, or maybe you didn't put any tags in there, or you didn't decide to do these things that keep people wanting to watch more of your content or to subscribe to you, and all of these multitude of things, and learning all of that is not as difficult as learning video production for someone that's never done it before. But another feather in the cap, so to speak. It's something else that you've got to understand and learn and do something about.
And in your experience with your channel, what do you find works and what doesn't? And I hate to define it as number of views or likes, but that seems to be the YouTube world. So which of your videos have been the most successful in terms of view counts and likes and things like that?
So I created a video with quite a special bike, the Crichton CR700, which is a rotary bike. So for a lot of people that don't know, rotary engines are in things like Mazdas. It's where most people are familiar with them. And not many of them have been put in bikes. There have been quite a few examples. So Suzuki had a go at it. I think there's a brand called DKW. People have dabbled with it, in sort of 70s, 80s, and so on. And Norton are probably one of the most successful people to take on the the philosophy. And Brian Crichton, the creator of this Crichton bike, is the chap that took Norton to their success in sort of the 80s and 90s in road racing. So I managed to find out that this bike was going to be at Cadwell Park on a specific day. And Guy Martin, a lot of people will know who Guy Martin is, a successful road racer or kind of turned TV presenter, trick mechanic. And, that combination was a gold mine. And it was through kind of luck and the people that I know that I managed to get their film and, create a successful video out of it. And actually, when I watch it back, I don't feel like it was one of my best videos in terms of production value or quality. So yeah, YouTube success doesn't necessarily mean it's something that I'm immensely proud of, because for me, like, a successful video is something that I can watch back and I'll always find something that I might want to change. Maybe it's the music, or a scene goes on too long, or whatever it might be. But I feel like if I can watch a video back and I'm still happy with it in its general form, then that's a successful video for me. And whether it's got 10 views or 10 million, it's not irrelevant, because I'm obviously doing it to try and gain views or subscribers or what have you. But it's not the measure for me. I don't get complete validation by other people. Certainly it helps, but my validation comes from within, in the sense that I want to be happy with what I've made. I could put something up, much less edited and produced, and it might be more successful, but it's not the videos that I want to create. So I wouldn't be happy with doing that. I don't want to be associated with those sort of videos.
And if you think back to when you first started, which is not that long ago, what were some of the early mistakes that you made, if any, that you look back now and you feel that, okay, you've sort of corrected for those definitely, and you sort of overcome those early challenges?
Yeah, if any was an interesting comment. There's many, 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 and I'm still making them. But number one, first and foremost, I didn't give audio a priority. I went and bought a DSLR camera to shoot on straight away and had GoPros, and thought that was enough. And actually, not prioritizing audio was a massive mistake, because the quality of YouTube now is so high that if you're new into the game, you have to be very good at it to be successful, or be very lucky, is my opinion. And yeah, not prioritizing that was definitely a hard lesson to learn, because people on the internet are cruel. They don't have that ability to be punched in the face if they say something that someone disagrees with, so they can write whatever they like, be as hurtful as they like, and kind of pull no punches and have no qualms about what they say, because you can't do anything about it. It's just there, and that's it. So yeah, audio was definitely number one, but there's everything. Yeah, leaving scenes to go on too long, waffling too much. People don't want to hear waffle; they'll just be skipping through. Having a kind of short intro or trailer at the beginning of each video that's the same each time. One thing that I always go back to is Top Gear. Having the Top Gear intro, great on a TV channel, because people can't skip it unless they're pre-recorded it. But on a YouTube video, it just makes people want to click off. It's not interesting for them. And kind of, at the very least, my data shows that. The analytics show that, if you put an intro in, they're not interested. So yeah, the first few videos, you'll see that on mine, and then after a while, it disappeared, because it's just hurtful to the sort of growth of the channel overall. But yeah, still making mistakes today. I'm sure there's a lot better filmmakers and content creators than me, and then they'd look at my stuff and say, yeah, that's not right, I'd do this differently, you should change that, and so on and so forth.
Do you have sort of any policy or guidelines for yourself in terms of engagement with the subscribers, the comments that come up? What's your approach to the interaction with the audience?
Yeah, so generally I feel that what I'm doing is I'm capturing people's free time, and people's free time is so precious. By the time that you work a job, and maybe you've got children or family members, whatever it may be, and you go to the gym and you cook food and you've got to sleep well and all the rest of it, they might have only half an hour a day that's truly free to do something. And if they're choosing that time to spend watching something of mine, and then they're going even further than that and choosing to comment on it, I feel like I'm doing them a disservice if I ignore it. So generally I try and respond to everything that I can. But if it's just a one word comment, one of the comments I had was on a video recently just saying "savage." I don't feel like there's enough content there to kind of respond to that and say anything. And If people are really critical, if it's something that's been said multiple times, like my latest video, people have criticized the audio and music, and I think actually that's kind of fair in some ways. And after the first couple of times, I might respond to it, and then when it's the 10th time, I'm like, oh, you know what, I kind of know. You don't need to tell me; it's fine, and I won't bother responding to it in that sense. And sometimes if they're really kind of aggressive and trying to knock me down, I'll either just block and delete it straight away, or kind of reply with a sarky comment, or some people have said like, "Oh, you can't take 125cc bikes from UK or South Africa. No wonder you had this problem on the first trip." And I just think you've got no clue. Like you've only seen it from YouTube side, which is 4 days into the trip we have a major problem. You don't know. Like now we're in Sierra Leone, they've made it here. It's absolutely fine. People ride small bikes. It's already been done. I'm not doing anything new. I'm just doing it slightly different. People have ridden 50cc bikes around the world. People have cycled around the world. If you can cycle, you can ride a small motorbike. It's just like a lot of small journeys put together. We're not doing anything that extravagant. So when people are commenting that, maybe sometimes I'll bite back and kind of regret it afterwards. In the heat of the moment, and they've sort of riled me up, I'll start smashing the keyboard. Well, I'll tell you. So it depends. Yeah, generally I try and answer everything that's positive and pleasant. But if it's kind of trying to knock me down, I'll generally leave it. And some people in my audience are actually awesome and come to my defense and that kind of thing. And I think that's fantastic to see. And generally I just leave it up because I think it sometimes it stands the test of time. Will they be proud they wrote that in a week, a month, a year, 10 years? That's on them to say. It's not for me to say. And I'll just leave it up, for other people to read and leave judgment upon.
So what are your ambitions for the channel, and how are things progressing against a plan that you maybe already have for the channel?
I'll be absolutely truthful. I would love for it to be big enough to keep me traveling for a while. If I stop traveling, I've got no plans to stop creating. I've had a bunch of ideas already of things that I'd like to do when I'm in a more stable environment, a home, so to speak, rather than living in a tent and hotels. So there's a lot of things that I'd like to still do on YouTube, and if that's doing a long-term adventure like this, brilliant. I'll continue to create those, and if not, then it's no problem. I've got more aspirations to do other videos. But for me, passion is motorbikes first. Then I've really enjoyed content creating, and I've had, in inverted commas, normal jobs, and I just despise working for other people in jobs that I don't enjoy, in office settings that are mundane and kind of tied up with red tape, and it just doesn't enthrall me in any way. So having the freedom to create type of things that I want to create and be proud of what I'm making, that's something I want to continue doing. And if I can make it a full-time job, fantastic. That would be amazing.
In your view, is it realistic to consider making a living out of it?
Yeah, I don't think it's a fantasy to do so. Plenty of people do it and are doing it successfully. One of my major concerns is what happens if someone turns YouTube off at some point, because it's only there while it's profitable, and if it becomes unprofitable at some point, then what do I do? But hey, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, I guess the background for my question was a fairly recent video put out by the Missenden Flyer, in which he did sort of the maths of how many views he was getting over what period of time, how many subscribers he had, and how much money he was actually making, and comparing that to the average wage in the UK. And it was kind of sobering to watch that video. I think it didn't really surprise me.
I think if you enter into YouTube wishing to become a rich person, you're probably going to be sorely mistaken. It's really difficult to make a kind of significant income, but an income that's livable. Absolutely think it's possible. Certainly while traveling, and the general costs are probably a little bit lower than they may be in Western areas, like living in main parts of Europe, UK, or the US, or something like that. I make a little bit of money out of YouTube, but it's really not a lot. What I make on YouTube in a month, we spend in 3 or 4 days on the road. So it's not making a massive amount of money at all, but every little helps. But I think that if you're going to be successful in YouTube, you can't have all your eggs in the YouTube basket, so to speak. I think the most successful people that are doing it, if you look at them, you'll see that perhaps they're selling an online course at the same time, maybe for photography or videography, or maybe they've got another way of making money. That's why you'll see a lot of sponsors. People are getting paid to promote someone's video because they're getting 100,000 views or a million views on a video, and they'll be being paid, a few £100 or whatever it might be to go ahead and do that. Or they'll be selling merchandise, stickers, T-shirts, hats, all these different things. Or they'll be the YouTube video that they're making, then they're having a tangible, something that they can sell afterwards. Maybe like a lot of people have on YouTube, they'll buy a car or a motorcycle or a widget for some pounds and it's in poor state. They'll make a video about how they've made it better and then sell it on for a profit. I tried that. Was crap at it. Didn't make a profit. But there's, then you'll start to see that the income that they're gaining from YouTube isn't the sole income. It's these multiple revenue streams that they've got, and YouTube is just a part of that. Yeah, I'm trying that as well in a small sense that I have stickers for sale, but it's more those that are perhaps inspired or interested in the trip. And I never want to ask for donations. I feel like that's being paid to have fun, or being given a gift to have fun. Like it's like someone saying, "Oh, I really want to go and fly a plane. Do you mind paying 500 quid for me to go and fly a plane?" It just doesn't seem right. But I feel like if they're getting a small tangible token of something, a sticker in this case, for £2.75, that's not a donation in my mind. They are getting something in return, and then it feels more acceptable to me, at least.
Yeah. So Tom, as a filmmaker, a content creator yourself, who have you taken inspiration from? Who do you feel has influenced you? And who would you encourage others to also watch?
Great question. I think a lot of my influence comes from, I say influence, it's not necessarily obvious in the videos that I create, but, production that I look up to, and it's not YouTube, it's the original, but the kind of heydays of Top Gear. That is something that I grew up with. And it's actually now that I look back on it and you see how high quality that was. And yeah, it might have been produced and scripts written for it. And it's obvious to see these kind of plot lines that they've, made a conscious effort to develop. And yeah, as a kid, I may have missed that, but now looking back, you can kind of see, and yeah, some of it's a bit sort of silly humor or what have you, and you might not enjoy it or appreciate it, but you can see why it was successful because of those things. And yeah, that's something that I'll always look up to. Yeah, you might not appreciate those individuals or the way they went about things or whatever it may be, but you can't deny the success that they had. There is no way of getting away from that. But then on YouTube, actually, someone that I really, really look up to is a guy called Bo Miles. And I'm not sure whether many people will know him if they're into motorcycling. He's not a motorcyclist, but he creates some of the most fantastic YouTube films that I've ever seen. So thought-provoking and such incredible storytelling, super simple. Like he made a video about eating only beans as a diet. And, you think that as a concept, well, how on earth is someone going to make a story out of that? And it's one of the most enjoyable YouTube videos about such a simple concept. So yeah, that's absolutely someone I urge people to go and have a look at because he's fantastic at what he does. And I must admit, I've really struggled to enjoy motorcycle content on YouTube, which is kind of quite hypocritical of me. But I think there's a lot of naff content out there, in my opinion. A single camera angle just pointing at the road or waffle, and it just does not engage me in the slightest. Even someone that has, say two cameras and it's one facing them, one facing the road, but that's all the video is for 15 minutes. I get pretty bored of that really quickly, and I've probably been guilty of that in the past. I know there's at least one video where I've done that sort of very simply, and I'm not necessarily proud of it. But you have to go through these things to learn it, and then it's other people's videos that I watch that you start to pick up things. I'd like to try that, or I see that. So yeah, Bike World in the UK do some really good reviews and things there. Is it Revzilla?
Yeah, I think so.
Ari
Yeah.
and I can't remember. Is it Zach? Some of their adventures they do are so incredibly well done. Like I watched the one where they went to India and rode around the Triumph 400s. That was a great film. Or the one recently they did where they turned a Yamaha scooter into a race bike. Or they did an old sidecar project, and I'll race sidecar and rode it to the track and then raced it back. Those films are incredible. They're kind of day-to-day reviews of, motorcycle genes or bikes or whatever. It just don't interest me. But yeah, those kind of story films, where they're actually going to do something that I would really like to do. Those are the ones that really capture me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Final question, and it's the last question I always ask my guests. Does filmmaking enhance or diminish the pleasure of a motorcycle ride for you?
I think both, because sometimes, I've had some really great times on bikes, and I think, God, I wish I'd filmed that, because that would have made a brilliant video, and I haven't filmed it for whatever reason. But then sometimes, it kind of becomes a chore and takes away from enjoying the moment. So yeah, definitely can be both, and I think it depends on your aspirations for either the motorcycle ride or the video beforehand as to the enjoyment you get out of it.
Tom, thanks so much for being my guest today. Other than your YouTube channel, where else can people find you online?
So Facebook and Instagram. It's I Like Motorbikes on Facebook as well. And sadly, someone stole I Like Motorbikes on Instagram before I could get there. So it's I Like_Motorbikes on Instagram.
Great. Best of luck with your onward journey. Cheers, Tom.
Thank you very much, Simon. Pleasure to be here.